Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the ATI Podcast. Barrett here, flying solo for this episode 89. And boy, do we have something special in the works for you guys today, and that is my conversation with the gentlemen of Jerome's Dream. We have both Jeff and Eric on the call today. So before we get to that love fest and talking about all the awesome things that Jerome's Dream is up to present day, and then do a little recap on the past with them, I'm going to kick things off with some current events talk. And that current events talk this week, we're going to take a little bit of a different spin on it, and that is some of the humor in recent headlines that I find as we've had some interesting developments in the last week. And of course, you know that we always try to keep a pulse on things politically and speak out and against the evildoers or those that we perceive as such out there. Of course, here, just in the last few nights, we had the Republican second debate. Quite the cast of characters. I'm not going to do a beat-for-beat synopsis or review of the debate, but rather than a observation about a cringeworthy and hilarious moment. And of all the moments that I could pick out, the one in particular that I found to be extremely hilarious in the moment, and that was whenever Chris Christie was going after Joe Biden for sleeping with a member of the teachers union. Okay, so of course we've seen Chris Christie try to play all sides of the fence for political gain, as most of them do. I guess his latest attempts at gaining favor, outside of the fact that he has now turned his back on Trump, he is also now out to speak as ill of Joe Biden in particular as he can. Not a huge shock. Two entirely different political parties on polar opposites of ideologies, for sure. But the soundbite I walked away with, of course, was Pence's rebuttal and Pence's failed attempt at humor. And that was Pence's response was, well, I just wanted to let you know, Chris, that I've been sleeping with a teacher for the last 38 years. The room got an awkward laughter, but the guy who is vectless, a soulless creature as it is anyways, that we've made tons of jokes about on the show as it is, Trump's former VP. I think that might actually be news, the fact that he actually slept with his wife, because we've heard all these wild stories, and he always refers to her as mother, and they sleep in separate beds and all that stuff. Quite the interesting rebut and attempt at humor by Mike Pence to break the news to us that he's been sleeping with a teacher for over 30 years himself. So quite the interesting attempt at humor by Mike Pence. A couple other comedic moments. Nikki Haley, of course, was personally attacking Vivek. Now, I thought he dropped out. I guess, well, obviously he didn't because he was at the debate last night, but I believe he's the same person who was doing the Eminem rapping at his political rallies, which is way out of lane for him, number one. It's just laughable as it is. But, you know, she slams Vivek by saying that every time she hears him, she feels a little bit dumber. Vivek tried to take the high road and say that he was not going to resort to personal insults. And this is kind of like, this is just my summation of the rebut, that, you know, the country needs leaders above this type of play. And I don't disagree with that statement, and I appreciate the attempt at the high road. And certainly that was one of the biggest criticisms that anybody can make of former President Trump, and that is the fact that he was unpresidential at every turn, right? Very unprofessional. His behavior was unbefitting of his office, you know, and that's just like the most basic, decent criticism that I think anybody could give of him, you know, and there's thousands of other issues that we've explored on this show politically and in the humanitarian field, and so many other issues, civil issues, common decency, I mean, morality. We could go on and on and on. But again, another odd, and then maybe the most hilarious moment from the debate, maybe the capper, is Ron DeSantis' ability to once again awkwardly look into the camera like a hostage. Like he looks like he's being held up for ransom up there on stage. The second time now, this is going viral, his dead stare into the camera and his awkward smile. If you guys haven't seen clips of this, like and you really want a good laugh, and this might be petty as fuck of me, but I don't care. There's a lot of disheartening things going on in politics, but I think kind of in the madness and the noise, you have to find the humor sometimes, and that's what I'm going to leave you with this week. So just some of the sound bites, clips, and memes coming out of just the second debate in and of itself, or I find to be highly entertaining, and that might make me petty. I don't know, but again, you have to try to find humor in the chaos. So if you guys want a good laugh, just go look at highlights of the 3 things that I mentioned regarding that debate. The other quick piece of current events that I got to talk about too is the fact that Trump and his sons, of course, were found guilty of fraud in New York. They had 10 days to liquidate their assets. I mean, we all kind of saw this coming, but it's kind of like one of the first big pins to drop in all of Trump's legal woes going on right now. So I think it's important to be aware of and see where this thing goes. The guy's got a lot of shit sandwiches being served up, and he better learn to like the taste, because it's not going to be the last one. And the comfort that I get in this, I'm not like a vindictive person in general and that sort of thing, but I know that man has caused a lot of people a heartache. He has fucked over a lot of good, hardworking people. He's a con artist who's taken advantage of so many people. We could go on about all the examples that we've discussed in detail on this show before: the Trump Steaks, Trump University, all the fraudulent business endeavors of his, the unsuccessful gambling empires. He's just not a decent human being. He used his presidential office for business gain when he was putting up officials in his hotels around the D.C. area, whenever he was charging huge bills to the Secret Service for their stay in Trump Tower. The list goes on and on. The man who complained about Obama playing golf, the man who complains about Biden going to the beach occasionally on a weekend, is the same guy who went golfing back to his own resort every single weekend during his presidency, stayed up until the wee hours in the morning, tweeting petty shit at 3 o'clock in the morning, went to work maybe at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, left work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I don't know who can do that at their job and keep a job in the United States and not face some sort of repercussion. I like to believe that there's some balance, there's some pendulum in the universe that swings around and evens things out. I understand that that's not what happens realistically more times than not, but when it does, it's kind of bittersweet. So I'm hoping that things are swinging in that direction and you reap what you sow. So again, Petty Bear is here today to be a little petty. Happy to see those being served the shit sandwiches that deserve it. This episode today a lot of our time is going to be dedicated to our guests, Jerome's Dream. And I definitely want the focus to be on them and their talents and the amazing things that they're doing. Jerome's Dream is a band that I can't tell you exactly when I became aware of them, but I was aware of their influence early on in my musical discoveries. Whenever I was discovering bands like Botch and City of Caterpillar and some of the Northeast people in the metal and hardcore scene, some of my favorites that I've fawned about on this podcast several times: Converge, Cave In, bands of those ilk, bands like Dead Guy and so on. So you're going to probably hear some of that talk and those bands come up in the conversation today with Jerome's Dream. But you guys have also heard the name Jerome's Dream a few times this season. A couple of our former Northeast guests, fans of heavy music or were in heavy bands or are currently in heavy bands, if you guys recall our conversation with Pete from Lotus Eater Machine, he cited Seisha and Jerome's Dream, bands like that, being early formative influences on the creations of their band, which they're, kind of mathcore, metalcore influences, a little grindy at times there, a little death grind going on. But that's a band that took from Jerome's Dream themselves. Another person that we spoke to, Ron Beaton of Vertical Space. We talked to this season as well, and very good friends of the podcast still yet. Stay in touch with those guys. They're doing a lot of amazing things. They put out a record in June that I highly recommend everybody checking out. And those guys, what I like about them is their eclectic musical influences. So you can see the influences of, maybe something more chaotic and mathematical rhythmically like that you might hear in a Jerome's Dream song, but also you can hear kind of the Jesse Lacey singer-songwriter approach of Ron with some of the instrumentation, particularly acoustic implementations on their record. So there's a lot to digest on their album, and really young guys too, all in their mid-early 20s too. So who knows how great those guys will eventually be, But yeah, so you guys have heard us talk about Jerome's Dream quite a few times on the show. We probably annoyed the shit out of everybody with our social media postings because this is one this season that we were really excited about landing on the podcast as a guest. Just a band, ever since even they put out this newest record, I was a huge fan of their early work. The fact that they got together, I was overjoyed a few years back. But this new record, it is within a different stratosphere. And at the close of last episode, whenever I was teasing their appearance on this episode, I talked about, if these guys aren't kings in the heavy music realm and the aggressive music realm, they're certainly princes. And I really meant that. And I think that after review, and it's something I came up with on the spur of the moment, when we were talking about them, but I think it's really befitting of them, and getting to talk to these guys and know them a little bit more on a little bit more personal level. It's one thing to sit around and watch all the interviews and listen to all the interviews and conversations that they've had publicly in the past, but I'm telling you, you aren't going to hear from any more real and kind people with good intentions. And at the end of the day, if I can bring people on this podcast and have real conversations with people that are good-hearted with good intentions, I'll consider it a win every time. These guys check all of those boxes. So if you haven't heard Jerome's Dream to date, of course, I can't encourage you enough to go through, listen to their catalog. We always talk about how Spotify is kind of the marketing tool for bands. We don't necessarily encourage you to live on Spotify with bands, but if you want to shop, they've got their catalog available there. They have a compilation of all of their early work, their work from 97 to 2001. It's on a 2005 release. That 2005 release, of course, is completed. It's a collection of their work from 97 to 2001. It's essentially a discography compilation of every single song that Jerome's Dream recorded throughout their lifespan and that early formation of the band, and even included live recordings and previously unreleased material. So if you want to get a good palette of the foundation that they are, it's not a bad place to start. There are a lot of videos online of their early performances, especially performances around the 2000 date that you can see. And in the conversation that I'm going to have with both ERIK and Jeff today, you're actually going to hear us alluding to some of their signature performance approaches, and they are on display in some of those early performances. Things like playing on corners of venues or up against walls with their backs turned to the crowd, not using microphones, all that type of stuff. You're going to see that actually in their early performances. One thing that I always enjoy about doing this podcast is just hearing stories from bands and being able to immediately connect with them with some of those experiences, and certainly that piece of just playing in unique spots within the venues and that sort of thing was something that I connected with, something that bands that I was in the past did, and not necessarily for any other reason other than we just felt more in our element, interacting closer with the crowd. We always played heavy music. It was a form of working out our angers and aggressions and our angst against society, and I know that that's translatable with these gentlemen here today. So anytime that I can connect with people on that sort of level, that usually always makes for good groundwork in our discussions that we have here on the podcast. But I think that the genuine good-hearted nature of these guys is going to shine through. Both really intelligent guys too. I can't speak enough on that as well. So for this week, guys, I'm just going to let the conversation do the talking, and there's not going to be any better salesperson or salesman for this band other than just getting to hear them talk. So we had a conversation just under 2 hours, and we're going to be bringing that conversation to you on the other side of the break. Stick around for Jerome's Dream. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the ATI Podcast. Barrett here with the gentlemen of Jerome's Dream for episode 89. How are we doing, both Jeff and Eric?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the show.
Wow, episode 89.
89.
You are
dude.
clocking them.
Yes.
Sick.
Yeah, we sure are.
Cool.
We came back in full force. This is our rebirth of our show, much like I think we have a kinship here because you guys have a rebirth as a band in the last few years. So, and we're excited to get into all that. And you guys first started as a band in '97, is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
September of '97. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe
it's hard to believe now.
I believe it was September 9th?
13th.
September 13th, 1997, we started. We are from Connecticut originally, and 97 to 2001, and we were pretty much East Coast based that whole time. I had moved to Massachusetts up in Amherst, I don't know how many months before we ended up stopping, but we were a New England band for sure, and it's kind of wild to think how long ago that was.
Yeah. Well, you guys were in a great place at the time for sure as well, considering all the heavy bands that were in that area. I mean, I don't have to tell you, but one of my faves right here, Converge. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you guys had the pleasure of recording with Kurt a few years ago as well.
We did. We recorded with Kurt several times, and we played with Converge once or twice in our younger years. But yeah, I mean, as far as New England as a musical hub for underground music, it was amazing because we lived in Connecticut, which was basically sandwiched between New York and Boston and like Rhode Island, and so many bands from both sides were coming through Connecticut and playing. I feel like almost every weekend there was a different show, a different band, whether it was Overcast from Massachusetts or if it was any of the New York hardcore bands coming through, Shift or like Quicksand, if you were lucky to see him, which I didn't, but I know Jeff, I believe, did way back when.
Yeah, I saw them with who did it? Sick of It All and Orange 9mm.
There you go.
Very cool.
This is a great show. Yeah.
But Jeff and I, we met actually at the All Ages DIY venue in New Haven, Connecticut, which is kind of on the shoreline, right smack in the middle of the shoreline of Connecticut. And that's where things kind of kicked off for our band. We were introduced by a mutual friend within the scene who actually worked the little record store within this space. And I was in there, I was like 17 or something, and I was like looking through some shit and stuff, and then Jeff came in, and he's like, well, for one, our friend Kyle Mullins, he was the second singer of this band called Josta 14, which originally had Jamie Josta from Hatebreed. That was his band before he went on to start Hatebreed. I'm just dropping a little deep cuts for you over here.
There you go.
But so Kyle, he's like, oh, Eric, you got to meet my friend Jeff. I think you guys should play music together. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, all right, and then I talked to Jeff for a little bit, and then he pulled out a Jesuit 7-inch from the milk crate in the record store. He's like, you should get this. And that really kind of set the tone and kicked everything off with our friendship and musical collaboration. So it wasn't that long after where Jeff and I, we scheduled a practice. He was like, oh yeah, I'm playing with my friend Nick. And when I realized that it was Nick, like this kid that I just saw at shows all the time, I'm like, oh dude, you're in this band too? Because I always saw Nick at every show every weekend, but he was just a kid that I would be like, hey, what's up, man? I didn't really know him, but he was just like a friendly face in the crowd, and Jeff, and it was playing with him already. So we got in Nick's mom's basement at some point, and that's when JD just like started. We didn't stop. We basically practiced once, and we're like, oh, this is all we're gonna do. This is it.
Yeah, we played what, I had written a couple songs. They were not very good, but Eric did some stuff to them, and we were like, "Holy shit, this is great!" And we knew we had something in this, dingy little dirty basement, and that was it. We just like Eric said, we didn't stop. It was from that moment on, it was full speed ahead. So
Yeah, and it was during a time. It was during a time where, because we were so young, we didn't really think. We didn't really think beyond what was in front of us in terms of like plans. We were just like young angry kids who realized that we could make sound. We can make music. We could do this creative collaboration with each other, and so yeah, like we would just like work shitty part-time jobs. I got Jeff a job at the restaurant I was working at. I was like washing dishes at the time, or like a line cook or something. Then we were just like cooking food together, and then we would peace out for 2 or 3 weeks and try and get on the road, and that that in itself was such a huge undertaking, not knowing anything and not having any recognition or following or money or good equipment, but we still did it. We bought a station wagon for $350. We packed everything in. The tape player didn't work, so we brought like a shitty boom box. And we drove across the country and back, and played maybe a total of 12 shows or something over the course of, I don't know, a stupid amount of time. But it was, for us, it was everything,
Sure.
It was
sure.
It was like our world just kind of opened up because we had this thing. And so I think Jeff and we've talked about it before. Like if we, like, I don't know, we had like some kind of mechanical issue the first day we set off. We were driving to like Reading, Pennsylvania or something, and the car was like doing something weird. I don't know if it was like
a power steering belt.
Was that at the?
It was
no.
It
remember
was
though,
loose.
it's something else. Something else was like slipping though. It wasn't just the steering belt. Like it felt like a transmission thing.
Maybe it was a transmission.
Like it was really worrisome. But anyway, like the point is, we almost didn't go. Like we almost didn't do that tour.
Yeah.
We're like,
should
we
we
do
go?
this? Yeah. Should we go or should we not? And
what would our lives have been like if we didn't go? I mean, God. Yeah.
I'm so glad we went, but it was life changing for us as kids, seeing
I could imagine
the country through the lens of just young punks who just didn't care about anything but doing that,
right. In a lot of interviews that I've seen with you guys of the past too, I find it kind of interesting because now everybody has to put a label on everything, right, and sound, and put everything into neat little boxes, and everybody likes to call you guys like a screamo band now, which back in the day that was kind of like a derogatory term, or at least it seemed like it to me in the scene, right? And but now it's it's kind of like the same phenomenon with like calling somebody a nerd. Like that used to be a diss, but now it's cool to be a nerd, right? And I know that you guys never like really identified as that, and probably wasn't even really a term when you guys started, right?
Screamo wasn't. I don't. But I mean, emo was obviously.
Sure.
I mean, we were cut from a cloth of like punk rock and hardcore, but there was a scene in Connecticut that was kind of like other. It was left of center from the typical youth crew and straight edge hardcore, and like even like the new metal stuff that was, I don't know, like a there was like this other corner in Connecticut that was like incubating bands. Like this band Cable just came to mind because I just saw them in another documentary. They were commenting on Dead Guy in Dead Guy's documentary Killing Music. The Cable guys were in that. I'm like, oh shit. But anyway, there are bands like In Vain,
Stanley
Cable,
Mocon.
Stanley Mocon. These are bands you won't find. You'll find In Vain, but what else? The Council of Five Nations. anyways, these bands were kind of considered to be like emo, you know, like in my younger years, I thought In Vain was like an emo band. And I thought they were cool because they were melodic, they were jazzy, they were fucking weird. They had like vocals that I never really heard before, you know, that kind of just screamy, shouty, kind of depleted, just weird sounding and expressive, and I don't know. I think as a band, we kind of gravitated towards that stuff, the less macho kind of like,
right.
I don't know, like, because we're just like a group of weirdo kids, you know. We didn't wear basketball jerseys and like, you know, straight edge swatches.
Sure.
And,
right.
You know.
Yeah. There's an intensity to your guys' music, though, even back then, that I would say is like, you know, equally barbs with that stuff, too. I mean, it's all a matter of preference at the end of the day, but, you know, I consider myself a connoisseur of all types of music, and you guys have just as intense music in your entire catalog from start to finish as any of those bands or those genres, I feel like.
Well, I think that for us, you know, the thing is, you could be a heavy band and not be what everything else sounds like, you know, because our music is so expressive. It really is kind of like our inner dialogue put out in sound waves. Like, not to sound like an asshole, like it sounds kind of pretentious, but like, you know what I mean? It's like we're not. The thing is, everyone feels anger. Everyone feels sadness. Everyone feels a sense of isolation at points in their life. They feel, you know, low. They feel slighted. They feel all the things. This band has acted as our platform to express all of those feelings in our own way. You know, there's no one way to express anger. It doesn't have to have like a fucking 4/4 breakdown and like a China symbol and you know, someone saying, all right, let's so fuck it up, let's go, like
yeah.
I mean, to each their own.
Sure, absolutely. And you know, like what you mentioned as well, there's an aggression, there's an intensity to your guys' music, though, but there's an underlying beauty as well that I've always noticed being there, at least to me. Just some of the chord progressions and things, even though while the beats are chaotic and bouncy, the riffs are still yet bouncy. You know, there's just a lot going on with your guys' music, even from the start. And
thank you.
You know, I know you've probably have already name dropped, excuse me, some of the bands that were probably at least initially an influence. And yes, you guys are your own band and your own sound, and you're expressing things in your own way. But what are some bands that you would say kind of propelled you guys into, like, you saw them say, hey, I can do that, or I can take my own spin on that? Is there any artists that jump to mind?
First for me is Garden Variety. Completely different, but still this, like, at the same time, it's not. There's like this beautiful dissonance there and urgency. I remember seeing them play with Into Another.
I forgot that you saw them. I forgot that you saw them as well.
Yeah. I was there to see Into Another with some friends of mine that I had played in another band with. That ultimately I wound up. I wasn't playing yet, and then I was like, I want to play now. But they just blew me away. I don't know if you've ever listened to Garden Variety, but that's the first one that comes to mind for me. Yeah. Knocking the skill level.
Yeah, knocking the skill level. Check out Garden Variety for sure. I think they're definitely an unsung band from that era. They were like a post-hardcore, like emotive, like post-rock. They were fucking fantastic. And they were definitely so all the bands that I mentioned earlier, they actually were, they weren't really influences. They were more so just it's what we were kind of observing in the local scene. And there's like countless others. I'm not going to bore you with them, but Garden Variety. But you know, we actually took to a lot of bands that we never saw. They were all through discovery of all of the records that Jeff was buying, and I don't even know where he was finding half of this shit, but like, you know, we would listen to a lot of these types of records just like on repeat. just because we loved listening to this music. We loved the feeling that we got when we would kind of not only listen to the record, but like kind of evaluate the packaging at the same time. A lot of these records were like hand done packaging and had this like really like tactile element to them. And this label in particular, and Jeff knows the label I'm going to say, it's Witching Hour Records, which was a small label from Indianapolis, right?
Yeah, or I think Indianapolis, yeah. Maybe Bloomington, but probably Indianapolis.
Yeah. It was run by this guy. His name is Christopher Williams, and he was in a band called Race Bannon that JD had toured with back in the day. Them and Usurp Synapse, who also just recently decided to reunite, and they're going to start playing some shows this fall. But it was a 3-band tour. It was called Pick Your Poison. But anyways, before we even did that tour with Race Bannon, Christopher Williams, who was one of the singers, he had this label, and he was putting out incredible records of these bands that were just fucking like so different from what we heard or what we were hearing. And I was like, dude, we need to find this guy. We need to like do a record with him. And so long story short, we ended up doing a split 5-inch with this band called Book of Dead Names, which had members of this band called Song of Zarathustra. We had never met them, but Chris just kind of paired us with that band, and we did this absurd record, a 5-inch. Like a lot of kids couldn't even play it because the record player would like the needle would just automatically come off it because it was too small of a radius, circumference or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the most known record that we did with Witching Hour was the Orchid Skull split 10-inch. It's a die-cut record, silk screened on one side, the other side, one band played from the outside in, the other band played from the inside out. 3 variants, never to be repressed again. I think there was only maybe, I don't know. There's like less than 1,500 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that.
Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just digging in the archives here.
Sure.
But as far as influences, yeah, I'll just say like, let me just like list off a whole laundry list. I'll just speak on behalf of Jeff as well because but everyone who's listening,
I'm gonna go get a drink while you do this.
Yeah, we'll see in a few. Everyone who's listening to this, if you're interested in this music, like, you should check out these bands if you don't listen to them already or haven't listened to them. But we were drawn to a lot of the West Coast hardcore, a lot of the ebullition bands. We loved Portraits of Past. We would listen to like Torches of Rome. We loved Honeywell, Angel Hair, Swing Kids. I personally liked the early Botch. I know Jeff didn't really get into Botch back in the day, but they came out with some 7-inch in the late 90s that was fucking brilliant. But that's kind of like where my fandom lied with them. But yeah, and so many more. But those few that I just listed off were kind of like the core. And then of course like bands like Unwound, and then things that were sort of unexpected or would be an unexpected influence, or bands that we really respected would be like a band from Pittsburgh called Hurl, or Paul Newman, which I believe was from Texas.
Texas, yeah.
And you will know us by the Trail of Dead, another sort of, maybe curveball for a lot of people. A lot of these bands now, like they're so underappreciated, which I think is such a crime, because these bands were fucking good. Like they were really good. Like when we were younger, we're like, damn, dude, these bands are so good. Like we'll never be this good. Like, Yeah. Coalesce is great too, by the way.
Oh my
which
God,
is also
yes.
which
Coalesce.
is kind of in your neck of the woods, I think, right? Somewhere down there.
Yeah. Kansas.
Yeah, Coalesce.
Yeah.
Incredible band for sure.
Yeah.
I just love the brutality.
You mentioned Dead Guy earlier too, so don't forget that.
Oh yeah,
of course, Dead Guy. I mean, honestly, this whole podcast could just be me spouting off bands that we love.
For sure.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. So, would you guys say in your early run, as far as your notoriety and attention that you got, what was kind of a linchpin, a springboard point for you? Would it be the split that you did with Usurp Synapse, or is there any other event that you would equate to just kind of your popularity? You felt like springboarding in the early years?
I don't think we were popular in the early years. We were just like, we were always going upstream. We always felt like we were the underdogs. We always felt like, and maybe still to a degree feel like that, I don't think we have anything to prove at this point. I think we've made our presence known, and we take our music very seriously, but when we were younger, we weren't welcomed with open arms when we first came out in the scene. A lot of people didn't know what the fuck we were doing. They were like, who is this band, and why are they playing on the floor? And why are they playing in that corner and not like where the PA is?
Where's
like
the fucking mic?
We were just doing like weird shit like that when we were kids, and I think a lot of other kids were just like, fuck this band. Like, who are these guys? And they suck, but
fucking drummer.
I know, he sucks. Damn. But I will say that over time, we did start to find our people, we became friends with Orchid not too long after we started. We did a lot of touring with them. So I think there was a certain benefit of just touring, period. But I think the JD Orchid pairing back then it just made sense. It just felt natural. We were genuinely friends, and we were sharing this experience together with them. And as a result, we were meeting all these other different bands from across the country. One band stands out to me, which is also kind of Midwest, was this band called To Dream of Autumn, which I haven't thought about in years, but they were such a nice group of people, and again, deep cuts in like the sort of like, for a lack of a better description, screamo world. There's so many bands from back then that we knew and interfaced with that are just like non-existent now and unsung, and maybe you can find them on Spotify, maybe you can't, but
don't forget Reversal.
Yeah, Reversal. We played with Reversal of Man and Ass Suck, up in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
that was a big win. But I'll tell you, I think the springboard for us, to tell you the truth, I think was Spotify. It was post breakup. I think what happened was someone put our entire catalog up on Spotify without permission. But we benefited from it, at the end of the day, because there was a new crop of kids who were discovering the music when they were kind of searching out this whole thing that was called screamo, and somehow we just got grouped into this whole thing. And people talk about Seisha, they talk about Orchid, they talk about Page 99, they talk about Jerome's Dream, they talk about the Neil Perrys and the Joshua Fit for Battles and Love Lost But Not Forgotten. We just all somehow got grouped into this package, and but really, it was just a bunch of kids and bands playing together back in the day. We were playing house shows, we were playing basements, VFW halls, the whole thing, and somehow all of these bands kind of stuck. And it's you can't plan this shit out,
Sure. There's a couple things that you mentioned, Eric, that I wanted to hone in on. First and foremost, I love hearing just kind of the idea of you guys just kind of going against the grain and playing like on the floor in a corner, all that stuff. In my early years when I was in a hardcore band, we kind of took the same approach. We would play like these festivals, these battles of the bands and stuff. And like there'd be these big stages where people were far away from you and you couldn't interact with the crowd and that sort of thing. I'm assuming that's in part why you did what you did back then. That's the reason I just bring up that example, because we felt disconnected from the crowd. So we would set up on the floor, and the sound guys would get pissed off at us, and everybody else we didn't care. We're like, we don't give a shit. Don't mic us. We'll figure it out. We want to interact with the crowd. We want to feel the people. That's why we do what we do. And I'm sure it was a similar mindset for you guys back then.
I think for us, that's totally cool. I think when it comes to any kind of artistic expression, we all have our reasons, and I think especially in those earlier days when we did it, we were operating in such an insular. We were so insular, you know. We were communicative with all of our peers and stuff, but as a band and like as three people who at the time we felt like we needed this thing to survive. We just needed the music. We needed each other. Like we were our own like isolated cell, you know. And so when we played live, we weren't trying to like we weren't trying to deliberately like shake it up. We were just like, this is how we do it. Like this is the way we operate. And the thing is, it was construed as like us being assholes because Jeff and Nick wouldn't face the crowd. They were always facing towards me. Jeff ended up not singing with a microphone because he decided he didn't need it, because he wasn't there to connect with the crowd in that way. You know, he wasn't like there to like, I don't know, ask how everyone's doing, because back then we more so just wanted to show what it was that we like were doing as a band. And if you wanted to watch it, if you wanted to be there with us, we wanted nothing more than people to surround us and watch it. But we just weren't there to be like, hey, how you guys doing tonight? You know, it's more like this was our own thing, and we welcome you to watch it because that's why we're setting up our equipment this is why we're at a show. But we just didn't really engage in a normal way that a band does or is expected to, you know. And for us, we didn't hold anyone's hand. We were just like, we're gonna fucking play, and if you like it, cool. If you don't, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's cool that you don't like it, but we still had a very like fuck you attitude. Still do. But we're nice. We're really nice.
Kindly fuck off.
Yeah.
Hope you're okay.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Another thing I noticed too, in what you mentioned earlier, I've actually talked to a couple bands actually this year, younger guys, younger than me, even I'm in my late 30s. They're actually from the Northeast area. There's a metalcore band that I talked to, Lotus Eater Machine, getting a little attention from Mathcore Index and those folks when they put out their album earlier this year. They name dropped you guys as a huge influence on them. And this, I believe this cat's like, 10 plus years younger than I was, am. And then awesome. Another guy that's in a kind of like a shoegazy band, but was in a hardcore band prior to that. And he just could not stop talking about Jerome's Dream. And that's Ron Beaton from Vertical Space, who we had earlier in the season. But again, another Northeast guy, younger guy. And I think to draw this back to what you said earlier, Eric, because I'm kind of scratching my head myself trying to like figure out outside of like geographically, like how the hell do these guys know about you guys? And it probably is the Spotify phenomenon, because I had a very similar experience. Actually, I saw Failure last summer, and I went to go check them out. And there was a real young kid there, like 12, 13. And whoever was running their merch stand was asking everybody how they, found out about Failure. Especially like younger people that were there. And he said Spotify. And I don't like ever really consider that. I mean, I do find artists on Spotify, but it was just weird to hear that that's how they heard of Failure, because I heard Failure on the radio in the 90s, as a kid listening to FM radio. So that's how I discovered them. So the discovery was very different. So I think there is something to that theory that you had there.
I've talked about this before, but like, what the internet and specifically what Spotify has afforded the underground scene in terms of scalability, and accessibility is incredible. And I'm here for it. I think it's amazing that, young or old or whatever, like if you're looking to discover new music, it doesn't even have to be hardcore. It could be anything. It could be fucking like soul records. It could be old like jazz stuff. Like you can get a whole education in one evening if you just spend 5 hours like listening to music and just keep kind of like, clicking on one artist to the next based on whatever Spotify recommends. Sure. I think it's super cool. And it kind of spreads like wildfire. So, when
the marketing capabilities of Spotify is a nice thing, but also, it sucks because you guys aren't getting the support financially that, a lot of bands deserve, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword too.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, you have to be a big artist in order to get like a serious payout. It's like,
Right.
I think even like a million monthly plays is still considered low.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like we get stoked when we get 1,000 plays.
I hear you, man.
And that'll be 0.00005 cents. So yeah, we're rolling in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All that screamo money,
I'm laughing my way to the bank. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are also kind of a part of this wave of bands. And I'm not saying you did it because of them or they did it because of you, but I love it and it's refreshing. Bands that I thought I would never see again, such as yourselves out there cutting teeth. Botch, you mentioned them earlier, a band that's back at it. City of Caterpillar, that's another great band from the East Coast, back great. At it here the last few years. Awesome people.
We just saw them. We just saw City. When was that, Jeff? Like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, a month ago maybe.
Yeah, they came through Oakland, and it was great to see them. Yeah, we actually had like an impromptu dinner with I think it was Brendan, right? But yeah,
did you guys get to play with them much back in the day in your scene?
One time.
No, yeah, it was one time. I think there's a flyer. It's like there's a flyer floating around on the internet somewhere. It was like City of Caterpillar, JD, and a couple other bands I don't remember.
Yeah, it's close to DC somewhere.
Yeah, they kind of came a little bit on the later side.
Sure.
They're one of the members of City of Caterpillar is also in Page 99, and Page 99 is a band that we played quite a bit with. They were one of those bands that were just kind of around. We played with them quite a bit. Specifically, like just East Coast shows, lots of East Coast shows with those guys.
Sure,
and they're lovely people.
Yeah, we had a pretty good band too that was kind of part of a similar scene in the same time frame as you guys too. Not Waving but Drowning, that was out of the St. Louis area.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that name, but I don't think we've listened to them.
Yeah, they're really solid dudes, and actually they just reformed too a few years back and started doing some reunion shows and stuff too. But
that's great.
They used to play a lot with like Open Hand, Zayo back in the day.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s. I mean, they were active from like 97 to like 2002. Then they disbanded, and then they got back together. They did a reunion show in 2012, and then actually I just talked to the drummer on the podcast this season too. So
cool.
It's been quite the year for the reunion chatter on our show, at least. So
sure.
Loving it. So speaking of reunion, let's talk about you guys getting back together and kind of what was the catalyst for that.
Well, I guess I'll go a little bit. So Eric and I, through the years, we would talk. We didn't talk for a couple of years after we initially split, but then somewhere along the way, Eric reached out and was like, "Hey, and we just started chatting pretty regularly, and then
because Jeff moved to San Francisco shortly after we disbanded. I was still on the East Coast. And then, whenever I would come through San Francisco or whatever, we would like meet up and grab a few beers and just like, just reminisce and just like chat about the old days and,
Sure.
But I kept, I would always be like, man, why don't you just like try to write a song, and, he'd be like, oh yeah, haha. And, I don't know. I think I just kept putting that in his ear, and I like to think
you
that's
played
what
the
happened.
long game.
Yeah, I played the long. I sure did.
It was all very maniacally planned.
17 years of waiting. Yeah. But I don't know. And then we didn't really talk to Nick at all in that time. And
Nick kind of fell back in the shadows, and I think it was 2017, which marked the 20th anniversary of our coming together as a band. And I said to Jeff, I think it was, I don't know if you brought it up or if I did, but we were just like, we should do like a 3-way call. We should find Nick for one. We should find Nick and just like, I don't know, catch up and just like, old homies just like chatting and seeing like what happens. And so whatever, we ended up finding him. I think he was in a cabin in Vermont or something for like many months, and then we got him out somehow. Yeah, Mountain Man. But no, so we had this call. I felt compelled to record it for some reason. I just felt like recording it. It's up on YouTube. It was a really long conversation. We were speaking on the phone for like fucking 3 hours or something. But I recorded it. I don't know why, but that ended up being sort of like I don't know, we had kind of joked on the call like, oh yeah, it'd be really cool to get in the room together again and like play some music, It's like, oh yeah, maybe we'll do that someday, like, yeah, that's cool. Like, but for some reason I left that phone call feeling so like inspired and happy to reconnect with my old friends that I basically said to myself, I want to make this happen. We have to play. Like, we should try playing again. And so, I don't know. I feel like I sort of, without really much discussion or planning, I basically opened up like a crowdfunding thing to fund a new record. And I told Jeff and Nick, I'm like, yeah, I think we're going to do this. I think we should just make a new record and like see what happens. It's like, if we can fund it by people who want to hear it, then let's make a new record and let's like go on tour and shit, Yeah. And we basically, we raised the money in like 3 or 4 days, unexpectedly. Like people fucking helped. They bought in, and we're like, oh, I guess we're making a new record, and I guess we have to like practice, and I guess we have to write songs, and I guess we have to like actually tour and like be a band. And so it was really daunting because I was living in Los Angeles. Jeff was living and is living in San Francisco. And Nick was in Connecticut. And so logistically, the challenge was like crazy, Like, how are we going to do this? Because the writing process really was so heavily relied on us being in a room together. You have to have that sort of synergy between the three people, and so it was totally like new territory for us. We somehow pulled it off. It was so whatever. We made that record in 2019. With like lukewarm reception, the record itself. But when we toured it, we were already a different band because we were actually rehearsing in like we were with each other. So the band kind of took on this new life. Like, making the record was way more difficult than we had anticipated. I mean, it's not a bad record, but we're not like I don't think we like stand behind it the way we do our new record. And some people like it, some people didn't like it. I totally understand. We really tried our best, but we toured the fuck out of it that summer. We did so much touring. We toured with so many amazing bands. We went out with our friends Loma Prieta. We toured with Touche Amore. We toured with Daughters. We toured with Soul Glow, Gouge Away. So many amazing, fantastic bands, and we were so lucky because like we just came back on the scene, and then suddenly like we kind of had like this red carpet rolled out, and it's like, this is fucked up. We were getting like everything that we could only dream about, and but then the pandemic hit, and then it derailed all of our trajectory. I think we played like 60 something shows that year, and then the pandemic hit. We were slated to like play shows in Russia, of all places. That's never going to happen, now.
Sad.
But anyway, like there's so much to like. I'm trying to be as like succinct as I can be with it, because it's just like so much has happened since we decided to get back together, and now we're almost like a new band because Nick has kind of stepped down. Our friend Sean, who is also in Loma Prieta, has been playing guitar with us as he's our only guitar player for like over 2 years now, almost 3 years. And we made this record during the pandemic, the new record. And it's been kind of like this turning of a page of a new chapter of the band. So, yes, this band, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm just trying to drop the history.
Definitely.
There's so much history. There's so much history to this band. But fast forward to now, we're like a completely different entity, Like we're drawing from the same principles that we were drawing from when we were kids, but we're older. We have, a whole lifetime of experience to draw from.
Yeah.
I think we're better musicians. We certainly have better equipment, that's for sure.
Yeah, I hear you.
And we're playing with our friend Sean. So the dynamic, while feels completely natural, and it was such an organic like folding in of him. It is a new thing, and it's fucking awesome.
Sean's an awesome musician as well too, and I love Loma Prieta as well. And man, what a perfect fit too for him to be in your guys' band. Really
perfect fit.
It was like Eric said, it was completely seamless. It was like, oh yeah. Why don't you play with us? Because this is perfect, So
yeah, he is very much of the same sort of sonic aesthetic that we are coming from. He is exactly that. And he's just such an amazing person and friend, and just a great overall human being that we're so lucky to have in our orbit and to be able to share these experiences with now, between touring and
definitely
making music, writing music, all the things. So it's cool because I moved to San Francisco mid-pandemic, July 2020. Jeff helped me move. It was a crazy time, but Jeff, he got in his car, he drove down to LA. We packed everything we could of mine in his car and mine, and we fast-tracked, me, Jeff, and Sean.
Yeah. And with the newest album, of course, The Gray in Between, I feel like you guys, there's a lot of connected tissue even back to what you did in your early days, though, too.
Mm-hmm.
Even more so than whenever you guys reformed.
100%.
And a lot of the same spirit, I feel like, is being revisited. A lot of that same intensity from back then. I just really feel like that you guys are just right back in that same mold, and that's just so rare to see that. 25 years later, almost now, that you guys just pop right back in the same old pair of shoes and pick up where you left off. That's incredible.
Yeah,
the intensity didn't disappear. It was always there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. Like Eric was talking about the LP, the record we released when we first got back together, and for me, I wasn't able to find that intensity right away. Because we weren't spending all that time in the room together, and I wasn't able to just sit on things the way that I was when we were playing together during the pandemic and writing Gray in Between.
Mm-hmm.
So, but once we were all together and it was regular, and there was no interruption or no shit. So you have to catch a flight in 2 days. We have this much time, But it just felt more natural to just be like, all right, well, let's go to the space for a couple hours, a couple times a week, and just let it be. That's when the real intensity started to come out. I guess it was starting to come out when we were playing in 2019 live, but it really, really found its way out once we were able to just be comfortable in the space and not have anything, any kind of deadlines looming. So
I mean, that was the advantage of I think us actually being able to get in a room. I mean, basically what happened was, because the three of us are in the Bay Area, and once we all felt comfortable getting in a room, after a vaccination, and we still wore masks for a while in the rehearsal space, but we just wanted to have some kind of routine. We wanted to we wanted to know that we had something to look forward to during a time of just like a lot of unknowns, of course, because everyone was
Absolutely.
living in isolation, and there was just only so much information we can get, you know, on a daily basis on like where this pandemic was going. And but yeah, once the vaccines were available, and you know, I mean, our bubble was basically the three of us and our families, you know,
Sure.
and so it was a very tight bubble. And yeah, like Jeff was saying, we were getting into the rehearsal space during that time, and it was just like everything was so quiet, you know, like there was hardly anyone in the rehearsal space at the time, and we didn't even like deliberately set out to make a record. It's not like we were like, okay, let's get in the rehearsal space and let's start writing. It was more so we just wanted to play, and it was our first opportunity to actually play with Sean and like really get, you know, just get in that circle together. And then it kind of organically started happening where we got in this rhythm of like, you know, I would like write a riff or two at home, and then I would bring it to these guys, and they'd be like, okay, and like we would develop it in the room together, and then suddenly like we have a song, and then the next week we'd have another idea of a second song, and so on and so forth. And before we knew it, we really got in this amazing rhythm of writing. Like every week, it was almost like going to work, to like the best job ever, you know, like we were like,
you actually look forward to going to work.
Right.
Yeah, like we were showing up, and we were like we were clocking serious hours, you know, like we'd be in the rehearsal space for like 5 hours, you know, just fucking writing. Sometimes we would play one riff on repeat for like an hour straight, just to like burn it in our minds and just almost
Sure.
like envision where it could go, or like what should happen next. And we were constantly recording, you know, iPhone demos and stuff. Sean, he'd have his phone. He was the guy who was recording all of the stuff. And then, you know, at some point we realized that we had something new. Like, oh, these songs feel like really significant, and they're hitting a certain way, and they're all kind of tied together. And I think the energy between the three of us and the execution of the songs, we were realizing that we were like really, you know, shaping these songs into something kind of bigger than the songs as individual pieces, you know. And then I think, really, to fast forward a little bit, when Jeff started writing lyrics, which was the very, very tail end of the writing process, I think he wrote in like a 2.5 week bracket of time. You wrote basically everything, because time constraints, because of his personal schedule, but it sealed everything together. Like Jeff's lyrical content sort of like was the bow on it, you know. And the gray in between is an excerpt from one of the songs, our one of our first singles, Stretched Invisible, from London. And that particular line just stood out. I think, Jeff, I think you brought it to us. You're like, what do you think about this as maybe the title?
Yeah.
And I you know, when it comes to like lyrical content and themes, I mean, I always defer to Jeff. You know, I think Jeff's an amazing writer. I think his lyrics almost read like poetry. You know, like I
Definitely.
And so, suddenly I felt like this new record was like, almost like the epicenter of this new chapter of the band. Like it all kind of gelled together. And yeah, so we made the record with our friend Jack Shirley, who's done, you know, everything from Deaf Heaven to, you know, he just remastered the new, the reissue of Quicksand's Slip album.
Yeah.
And just like a million other amazing bands. Jeff Rosenstock. And anyways, I'm sure a lot of people, all the nerds, probably know who Jack Shirley is, but anyway, and then we took on as much touring as we could this year, and it's been fucking amazing. The summer was insane, and I still can't believe we did what we did, went where we went, and we still have a few more shows left on the West Coast, and we're playing a fest in Gainesville. We're playing the fest in Gainesville next month in October. So it's been a crazy year, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing you guys did that was very cool, and they're starting to have more heavy bands on that. It's Audio Tree. Talk about that experience you guys got to play there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we were planning out this year, I was like, hey, we should try to do this Audio Tree thing. And, our friends in Vane had done it, and Soft Kill. And I was like, why can't we do it? Let's try to do it. And so as Erik was saying earlier, he sort of makes things his mission. Once he gets he gets bit by that bug, he's like, I'm gonna make this happen. And so he made the Audio Tree thing happen. So I'll let you talk about that process. But
well, it was kind of perfect timing because our record came out May 5th, and that weekend was our first. That was our first reveal of new songs, basically. So we had played the ZBR Fest in Chicago, in Audio Tree broadcasts from Chicago, and we just knew that we had to do Audio Tree as well, and so it took a lot of navigating. Their music supervisor, or the email address of one music supervisor that I had gotten from a friend was no longer there, but then somehow got directed to actually our friend Seb from the band Meth from Chicago as well, was the bridge between us and Audio Tree. So shout out to Seb for that. Put us in touch with them. We hit them up and said, hey, we're coming through Chicago. We'd love to get something on the books if you have an open slot. It took a little bit of back and forth, but it happened. And that weekend in Chicago was just, speaking of the experience, it was amazing because we headlined ZBR. It was our first weekend out upon releasing our new record. Not only did we play ZBR Fest and play Audio Tree, our friend John from Usurp Synapse is the content director for Chicago Music Exchange. So we also had the privilege of playing Chicago Music Exchange that weekend as well. So it was a 1, 2, 3, like back to back, just insanity. And to reflect on this, on all of it, it's just fucking wild that we even pulled it off. But anyways, Audio Tree, the staff there were amazing. The whole crew, the host, Psalm One, she's a rapper out in Chicago, an amazing interviewer, and they were so hospitable and welcoming and such fucking pros. Like, they just made it feel like it was fun and casual. Like, it didn't feel that high stress, even though it's kind of a prestigious slot to get. And even though I think we've put in our time, I still feel like we're like the young kids who like don't like. It's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like, what do we
some
do
of it has to be
deserve
surreal,
this?
Right?
Dude, it's all surreal, man. We're in our 40s, dude, and we're playing hardcore music. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I got a chance to see
Life is wild. Yeah.
The Chicago Music Exchange performance too was great as well, and it was really cool to see you guys sit down with your friend because it was just like old friends talking too. It was just kind of a different presentation. There was almost a stark contrast to the interview of Audio Tree in that sense, just because you guys were able to talk about old memories and kind of relive some of those things too.
Yeah, I mean, when you pack in a van for 6 weeks with someone, you have a very unique relationship with them, even if it's 25 years down the line. You got something with that person that you don't have with anyone else. And John is one of those people for us. He and his band and JEROMES DREAM, we shared a van together, a 15-passenger van, and it was disgusting. But
I can imagine.
But we'll never forget those memories with Usurp, and I'm so stoked that those guys are getting back together, reuniting for some shows, and John from Usurp gave us an opportunity to play Chicago Music Exchange, but he also facilitated our whole backline, all of our music equipment that weekend. He made it happen, and
he held our merch after we left that we couldn't bring back. I mean, we couldn't have done all the things we did without him. So
yeah, it really takes a village. It's been amazing, man. Like all this stuff that we managed to pull off, it wasn't single-handedly. I mean, there are so many people who have been in our corner, and they don't have to be. But the amount of support this band has gotten from people all over the world has been fucking nuts. And I still feel like we're those young kids from Connecticut that, just like, yeah. It's just it's a surreal thing, man. It's surreal.
It is surreal.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to see it for you guys. In my opinion, well deserved, well earned. I can't speak highly enough of the Gray in Between, this new record that you guys have out. It's incredible. If any of our listeners haven't listened to this yet, I'm going to highly encourage you to do so. You guys are going to hear in the post, if you guys are on the live chat with us, in the post-production piece of the show, we're going to have some clips of songs going into and out of the interviews with Jerome's Dream today, and then we're going to have a full length at the end of the episode if these gentlemen would be so kind to allow me to do so, for you guys to really get a good taste of their music. And
Share away.
All right, awesome. Mm-hmm. The new album's an easy listen. We got 10 tracks. It's just under 25 minutes. The Gray in Between on IODINE Recordings. How did the IODINE Recordings relationship come into play for you guys, if you don't mind me asking?
That's a good question. That one, yeah.
Are you sure? Do you want to take that one, or?
Well, I mean, he made initial contact with you, but I'll add my 2 cents. But
all right, well, I'll set the tone. I mean, basically, IODINE Recordings was a label back in the day, a Boston-based label, and Casey, the owner and founder of IODINE, when we were younger, he invited Jerome's Dream to be a part of a compilation that he put out. It was called The Ghost and the Gears. And, at the time, I think we only had like a demo out or like a split 7-inch. The demo became the split 7-inch with this band called Amalgamation, who our good buddy Forbes Graham was in, and also put out. He had a label called Rice Control. But we put out, I believe it was the track Every Day at 306, which was one of our first recordings. We put that on the comp, the IODINE comp for Casey. The comp was comprised of bands like Converge, Cave-In, Garrison, a band called Zygoda. I don't know. I don't remember who else was on that. Quite a few others, but those are the ones that stand out to me. And for us, I mean, even if we were invited to be on a comp now with those bands, it's like, fuck yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. But as younger kids who really looked up to bands like Converge, we're like, damn, dude, we just hit the fucking like lottery because we had nothing circulating out there, and somehow Casey found us and invited us to be a part of it, and that was like in 2000 or something, or no, that was like
98.
98. It was really early, and so again, there's a lot of history there. So when you fast forward to now and these future times, he hit us up, asked us if we'd be interested in reissuing our last record that we made when we were a band in the first iteration. It's called Presents. He's like, hey, would you be interested in reissuing this? I would love to put it out. It just so happened to be the 20th anniversary of that release, and we're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, let's do it. And so that's when we kind of rekindled, and also we just kind of kicked off like this more significant friendship now as adults than we had with him back in the day. I truthfully don't really remember that much interaction with him when we were younger. Like, it was just different, but now, like,
sure,
we actually like talk to him as like people, not just like,
right,
how many units did we sell? It's like he's our friend, and he's been an amazing collaborator with that reissue. But of course, he also put out The Grain Between. So he's one of the hardest working people we know, I think. He's also like one of the realest people, and I'm so grateful that we did this record with him, because he's just been just so present along every single checkpoint for its release. And what a wild year that we've shared with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think he was as excited about it as we were. And I mean, I remember him calling me and being like, dude, I just, like, when we shared it with him, it was all written and ready to go. And he calls me after he listens to it, and he's like, dude, I listened to this and I was in tears. And, because we sent him the lyrics and everything, and he just it just grabbed a hold of him. And, I was like, man, and, we would, his son was going through some health stuff, and so I would call and just check in with him pretty regularly. But just speaking to what Erik is saying, like, the friendship went deep. It wasn't like, we were on some big label and it's beneficial for us to be on that label. It was more like, let's do this thing with our friend, and
Right.
it just feels natural. It feels organic, and that's a really important part of how we operate.
Definitely.
We try to surround ourselves with people that are intentional and thoughtful about what they're doing. So,
well, I think kind of a big theme of what we're hitting on here is maturity, though, too. It's not to say that we were all immature in younger years. I mean, it's just a part of growing up and getting older and having families and understanding the importance of relationships and relationship building. And that is, back whenever you guys were younger and being on that compilation, even though you thought it was a cool thing, you get this cool opportunity to be on this amazing compilation with all these bands and so on and so forth. Fast forward that to today, you guys understand the importance of actually, having a relationship with people in those positions. And I mean, it just makes like the whole doing of business much more pleasant as well, too. Not to say that everybody's like, going into it with that mindset per se, but yeah, I mean, you guys have matured, and I think that translates over to the music too. Again, not that your music was ever immature, but there's definitely a maturity, a progression there that you can tell. And back to what Erik has talked about too, Jeff, with your lyrics, and man, what heavy hitting lyrics on this newest album as well. And just incredible, poetic. If you can't like get emotional in reading the lyrics on this newest album, I would challenge you to tell you that you don't have an emotional strike in your body. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. Erik mentioned earlier that I wrote them all towards the end of the record, and God, that was a tough couple weeks to just sit there in that headspace to do that. It's
Did you kind of thematically already have themes in your mind that you were thinking about or toiling on, or did you just kind of like keep it totally out of mind until the music was done and then just sit down? I don't know if you're like a guy that works best under pressure, forms diamonds, if you will, but
probably work better under pressure, but I don't like to.
Sure.
But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I just went to the depths, of my soul to find what I wrote about, and I hadn't gone that deep in forever, and I don't know. It was challenging, but I would just sit with these songs. Erik and I, he would send me his ideas about how the lyrics would sit in the songs, the phrasing, and so I would listen to his ideas, and he'd sort of like just mouth them or shout, or I don't know what you did, but
well yeah, I mean, I don't know how many bands like collaborate like this, but we we kind of found an interesting unconventional process in like creating the roadmaps for Jeff's writing. And the thing is, I do find it incredible that Jeff wrote what he wrote for this record within. I don't want to say I think with for anyone who doesn't know, but like phrasing, like phrasing, it could be like vocal phrasing, so it's how the vocals kind of navigate the music underneath it, and we kind of tackled it together and sort of figured out how it would work best for Jeff's writing. And it's weird because I also took into account that he's playing bass as well. And the crazy thing with Jeff is that he somehow still managed to reach in the depths of his soul and write like some of the heaviest lyrical content ever within this band, and it all kind of fit into the, I don't want to say the mold because that feels negative to me, but like it fit, it just sit atop the music perfectly, and
Definitely.
Everything worked out just the way I think we had hoped for it to. But that said, we workshopped the fuck out of it. We did a lot of demoing. We rehearsed so much. We did so much troubleshooting. I mean, there were times where we'd come away and from a rehearsal, and Sean would just be in a fucking grumpy mood because we were stuck on like a part for 4 hours, and he'd be like, "Okay, well, I guess we'll do that again tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
And then he would.
Yeah, and,
I mean, I get it. Yeah.
Well, when I was going to say when we recorded the lyrics too, we recorded the music with our friend Jack separately, and then
at his studio. But we actually recorded Jeff's. So I engineered the vocals at our rehearsal space about 3 feet away from Jeff. And I was almost like I was conducting him, and like almost like producing like yeah, like fuck, like
he's like harder,
belt that shit, yeah, go harder.
I'm like,
don't fucking
fuck
hold back.
You it's like
go to the place and fucking let loose, go.
Yeah,
and we did that, for 10 songs, and it was awesome.
It was, I was a little self-conscious at first because we're in our practice space, so people could be walking down the hall, and then they're not hearing any of the music; they're just hearing me do that. But but I had
it's like an insane asylum.
I had actually spent some time in our practice space doing that. I think I've talked about this in podcasts, but I redid some of the lyrics for the LP as well. That still haven't seen the light of day, but so I was kind of used to going in there and doing it that way, but still not to the extent that we did. But and then
such a weird process.
It's a weird process, and I felt a little uncomfortable. I was like, man, I'm screaming right into Erik's face. Poor guy, he's gonna get sick.
Yeah.
Like, I've got COVID. He's got COVID now. Like, stuff like that. But
no, but we pulled it off though, and not for nothing. I think we'll probably do the same way next time.
Yep.
Yeah.
It worked, and it was nice because we were able to workshop it together while not feeling the pressure of being in a fancy studio. We just did it in a rehearsal space with a regular SM57 mic, I think, or whatever. Oh no, we
holding it.
No, you used your bullet mic.
No,
what are we talking about?
Bullet mic.
Yeah.
But
anyways, it worked out just fine, and I mean, our friend Jack, who we did the record with, he's the one who recommended it. He's like, "Why don't you guys just do the vocals in the rehearsal space, and I'll fly them in the session when they're done." And so that's what we did, and it worked out. It worked out great.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. It came out great for sure.
You don't have to be super fancy to get the results that you hope to get. I mean, we didn't really set out to like achieve a certain thing with this record. It was kind of like this very organic trajectory from when we started writing and developing these songs to when we got in the studio with Jack. The one thing I could say is that we were more prepared for this record than we've ever been for anything we've done. So that was a huge huge advantage because and we also played like 1 or 2 shows before we got in the studio, like the night before. So there was something really advantageous about doing this thing on stage first and then going into the studio versus making it in the studio first and then translating it to the stage. We workshop these songs like at shows, which was really helpful.
Yeah.
I think it was actually only 1 show, right, Jeff, in Oakland?
Well, we played.
Or did we play?
We played Portland and Seattle 2 weeks before that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had sort of deliberately set it up rather, to play these string of shows prefacing getting into the studio to make the record. And we have to do that next time because it was so helpful. And I think it just it brought a certain confidence to the group. And we were like we were focused, and I think there was like a high intensity in the room, when we were recording for those few days. But it was more so just like the intensity that comes with like that focus of just making the best thing you can make,
right?
But not feeling unprepared. We were fucking prepared,
Yeah.
And we brought the energy of the crowd with us, and that was really important to me, was to have that visceral energy that a crowd brings. And Oakland, to their credit, they really brought it. They went off.
Well, they showed up. It was almost it was almost like 250 kids in a room, and they fucking went nuts, and they were going crazy to the songs that we hadn't even recorded yet. So I'm like, okay, these are working.
Good
this
sign.
Is awesome.
Yeah,
good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier too, and I don't know if this is the case, but perhaps even with the LP, whenever you guys got back together and started, recording that album, the crowdfunded album, maybe the difference is here the fact that you guys got to workshop this stuff out ahead of time, and you guys got to build up that chemistry again, right? You didn't go in cold and writing a record from scratch. Like I know in my personal experiences, like the worst songs usually came out with things that we were developing, like as we were going into the studio or into recording, versus things that we had already workshopped in advance and coming off a show as well. Like you guys are mentioning, you get to bring that high that you get with a live performance, that energy, that adrenaline that just carries over with you. And if you can bring that energy into a studio too, that's again just very advantageous to the whole situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we became a different band over the recent years, upon reuniting, and definitely a different band upon looping Sean into the mix. We are like a different band in that regard, just dynamically, musically. Our unit is so streamlined now. It's just like, for a while we were thinking we needed 2 guitarists, but we don't need 2 guitarists.
No, you don't.
I think being a power trio is kind of cool.
It is.
Yeah. But yeah, the difference between that first LP in 2019 and this record is, just weeks and weeks and weeks of touring, and
sure.
reacquainting ourselves, kind of what Jeff was saying earlier about being able to stay in this headspace, or being able to be in a frame of mind that doesn't that isn't broken up by like going 3,000 miles across the country and just resuming regular life and then having to come back into it. It's like, I think during the pandemic too, which in its own way brought a very like acute focus to the work, because it's like we had like everyday life of the unknown with the pandemic and all the chaos,
lots of suffering.
So the one thing that we had control of was our own self-inflicted suffering in the rehearsal space, which was just hours and hours of working, and we love suffering, so fucking it was perfect. We really stretched ourselves on this one, just in terms of our commitment and our dedication to. It wasn't even like the dedication to making this record. It was just like the commitment to showing up every week and just making,
and being together.
Like, Yeah,
That was a big part of it.
It was a big part of it, and it was like such a special bracket of time to have with your friends during such a fucking weird time in the world, you know.
For sure.
It
But
brought
you guys found a refuge though with something that was familiar in the
absolutely.
past too, for sure, in a
Mhm.
daunting time, and good for you guys to be able to find that, because there's a lot of people that were looking for a lot of answers in that time, and there's definitely returning to music, returning to creativity. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to return to in those times.
Mhm.
Yeah, super grateful to have that, or to have music and creativity and our friendship at this point in our lives. You know, it's like, when you become older, um, things change a bit, just in terms of just your everyday life, your responsibilities, you know, I mean, just a lot just invariably changes. But when you're able to have these experiences with friends that you share a really deep history with, and even with Sean, while he's kind of a newer, I don't want to say addition, but he's new to the mix as far as the band goes. But Sean has been around forever too. He knows exactly where we come from, because he comes from the same place in terms of our culture, underground music, punk rock.
Sure.
So it's just really special to share that with friends at this point in life, and in addition to that, to be able to play this music that we make and to play it in front of people who appreciate it is just above and beyond me. Like, I still can't believe that we're doing what we're doing at this capacity at this point in our lives. It's just the fucking coolest thing ever, and we do not take it for granted. We are so grateful and so appreciative of all the opportunities and experience that it's afforded us in terms of who we've met, who we've shared the stages with. Stuff like Audio Tree, or like we played this festival in Europe a month or two ago. Biggest crowd we've ever played in front of. It was like a few thousand people, and we headlined this festival, and it's like, who are we? What is this? This is wild. Like, we're playing hardcore music, and we're in fucking like Chechnya, playing in front of thousands of people, and it's just like, wow, this is so insane and so special. And I think we just want to do it for as long as we can. And the thing with especially Jeff and I, we're very intense people, and I think we would prefer to keep the pedal to the metal, like fucking red RPMs, for as long as possible without burning out. Sometimes it's hard, especially when you hit the 3 or 4 week mark on tour. You start getting a little on edge, but again, the suffering. It's all about the suffering.
I hear you. Jeff, what is something, having since reformed with the band, that was very unsuspecting to you, so something that you didn't suspect, that's been a pleasant surprise, would you say?
It's all great. I have a wife and son, and my son was 3 when we decided to get back together. He's 8 now. And during the pandemic, it was really hard, right? We were just always like, my son, he's a punk. He's a punk. It's in his blood, So anytime I was like, dude, you got to do this, he'd be like, fuck you, not literally, but with his actions,
Sure.
And
or inaction.
Yeah, or inaction. Totally, right. I've heard him a couple times upstairs, like not wanting to go to bed or whatever. But getting into the practice space, and then going on tour and doing all the things, sometimes he and my wife, I'd just be like, God, I gotta get the fuck away from you, and and like those moments where we're able to go out, it renews how much they mean to me, how much I love them, and I come home and I'm just like, fuck. And it's so nice to have that reset. I don't know if you're married or you have kids or what
Yes,
you're.
sir.
Yeah. So it's, you miss your family when you're away. So it's true. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And, it's funny too, because when we're absent from the music, you just love it more. And you're like, God, I can't wait to get back to it,
Right.
So it's just being able to do this and have sort of alternate realities. It just makes me feel appreciative of both way more than I would if I was only doing one all the time, if that makes sense. So I think it's just made all the things in my life more rich by being able to do this. So
yeah, it's like a very unique
cool
privilege to be able to do that. Like, and yeah, I have to echo that what Jeff is saying in terms of just like appreciating home life. Like I'm not married or have a kid, but it is nice to embrace the simplicity of being home and like the calm and like well, I know for Jeff it's not calm at home. But
I hear you, Jeff.
but
I got 3 kids,
we're
so
oh man, bless you.
Yeah.
But to have that sort of the multiple avenues between home life or having a place to go to be creative and to be with your friends and to kind of blow off some steam for a few hours once a week or whatever, and then in addition actually take it on the road and share it with people across the world. The fact that we get to do that again, it is, we always just reflect on it and just are always talking about like how grateful we are to be able to do it at this capacity at this point. And so I think it's inspiring to get to this point after making this record where it's almost like this is just the beginning. You want to talk about a springboard? I think the gray in between is our springboard to challenge ourselves to take it to an even like different place. I don't want to say higher place. I just want to say like I want us to challenge our creative capacity or something, and see what we can make next time, and we're already toying with ideas. I mean, I'm already, speaking of home life, I'm at home and I'm actually borrowing Sean's guitar. I'm a drummer, right? But like I fake playing guitar, so I have a guitar here, borrowing
same,
Sean's.
brother. Same.
Yeah. So, all right.
Yep.
But I just record ideas and
Yeah.
I'm kind of banking ideas right now. So when we do get in a room, the 3 of us, I can at least lead with these ideas that I have and see what
Sure.
these dudes think and see what can of worms that opens,
I can just play guitar enough to accidentally sound okay sometimes, just enough to piss off my bandmates,
Sick. Yeah.
High five.
Same.
High five.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
But I share in the drummer's plight, Eric, for sure.
Nice. But, I think, our writing process is weird. It's funny because like Sean was like talking about it a few weeks ago where he's like, oh, it's like I finally understand like how this works with you guys, in terms of like the writing, because you have a drummer
I wasn't there for
who's
that.
Basically, I thought you were, but
No.
but he was just acknowledging how Jeff and I we're so locked in because we're basically one percussive unit.
Sure.
The way I write music, and how Jeff and I kind of translate it as a unit, basically, it becomes this just like, like a pinball machine type of thing going on with bass and drums, and
Definitely.
and it's always worked with our band, and that's kind of just how we know. I mean, that's what comes out expressively for us in terms of just how we construct songs, and we write riffs, but they're like very percussive versus like,
right.
I don't know.
Well,
like
even the
sometimes you
vocal
listen to
approaches
bands.
are kind of in that realm too, right? With some of that percussiveness, as you were talking about earlier, kind of the ambient pentameter of the voice and how you're, and I earlier mentioned kind of the bouncy riffs and stuff. Like, there's a lot of cool things rhythmically, and the pinball analogy is perfect. Really, I should have thought of that. That's exactly what it is for sure.
Well, you just said pockets, right? Did you say pockets, or what you said? Rhythm. Sorry, I'm kind of
Ambient
like losing my
pentameter.
mind. Yeah. Well, sorry, I'm kind of losing my mind here a little bit. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I'm like,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But yes, it's like basically, we create space for everything to kind of live within a song, and that's drums and bass, guitar, vocals. Like, we're very specific in like where things land, and that's just kind of how we construct songs, I guess. Everything has a pocket. I guess that's. I think I was going to say that like we create pockets for things to live within a song, and
Sure.
yeah. Anyway, I know you didn't really ask about that, but I'm just
No,
spitting
actually,
over here.
you kind of answered what I was alluding to. So, Eric, too, I know that you have a podcast yourself, right? Are you still doing that?
Yeah. The podcast is called Microspy.
Okay.
I am nowhere near 80 something episodes. I just did my 21st episode today. I'm starting to take it more seriously and I'm trying to hold myself accountable to do one podcast a week. I kind of lost, I sort of lost, consistency with touring and stuff. And
Sure.
yeah, and I still don't have my system down, but yeah, I've been doing an interview a week so far the past month or so, and I've been lucky enough to have some great guests on. And today, a new episode just dropped with director John Nix, who did the documentary film on Justin Pearson from The Locust. It's called "Don't Fall in Love with Yourself," which just came out recently, and I was able to talk to him about the making of that and his creative process. It was amazing. It was so great to like really get in the weeds with him about it. So that just came out today, and I got some other exciting guests coming up. But yeah, if anyone's listening, just check out the podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Micro Yesteryear. I just did Dead Guy last week.
Nice.
But I'm trying. I really want to expand the palette a little bit more. So I'm just getting warmed up. I'm just trying to get my my legs underneath me, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm sure you're enjoying it. 80 plus episodes in. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a fun medium.
Yeah, it is, and you can really do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Most of my trade and experience is music related, and that's most of the guests that we have. But we speak to people in film too. We've spoken to actresses, actors, short film directors. Had a little bit of everybody on the show. Professional wrestlers, aspiring professional wrestlers. Yeah,
That's awesome.
But yeah,
That's awesome.
we're always just trying to promote artists in particular, or people that are out there just like trying to cut their teeth, and in this case, just wanted to expose some people to younger generations, if you will, of our audience, to Jerome's Dream. That if you guys aren't on their radar, well, God damn it, they should be on your radar, right?
It's much appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time, gentlemen. You guys have been so generous with your time. I just want to ask you a couple random questions on the way out, just so that our audience gets to know you a little bit better. So we'll get off of the serious talk, maybe. What are you currently spinning, Eric? What are some of the bands that are heavy in your rotation right now?
It's a unique blend of stuff because I run a lot, so I've been trying to be more deliberate with my running playlists. So I've got like this weird mix of like the first eighth of the playlist has like lo-fi EDM type stuff, but then it goes very sharply to like 90s throwback hip hop, like Smith and Wesson and Gangstar, oh my God, Tribe Called Quest. I mean, all the heavy hitters, De La Soul, and I kind of stick to what I've been listening to for years. I just try and mix them up a little bit, but yeah. And then just like I don't know. I don't know artists' names, but I try to find deep cuts. Speaking of Spotify, I try to find the deep cuts of like old soul music, soul and funk music.
Yeah.
A little bit of R&B stuff, all the old stuff. But yeah.
How about you, Jeff? What's something that's heavy in the rotation
Jeff,
for
are
you
you
right
there?
now?
Yeah, I'm here. I pulled out some. I just pulled out my liked songs. I don't know. There's tons of them. But I don't know. Recent stuff. The new Slow Dive record just came out. I'm still trying to process that. Decide if I like it as much as the older stuff or not. It's different.
Yeah, me too.
I haven't heard it yet.
What else? The new Swans record I think is fantastic. I just like we were all talking about Spotify earlier. Just like random stuff comes up, and I'm like, that's good. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna keep that. And I listen to a lot of music with my son. Just trying to sort of teach him what's out there.
Right.
He's doing this theater thing at school, where they have to be like they're doing like some rock play or something, and he's so stoked on it. He's like, his name is Crash in the play they're doing, and he gets to sing "We Are the Champions," and it's really cool. So, I just like we'll like listen to Queen in the car on the way to school or on the way home, and but I'm just Tangerine Dream. They released some new stuff recently, so just like a lot of stuff across the spectrum. So, yeah.
Very cool. Let me ask you, gentlemen, each, and you guys can approach this how you wish. If you guys were to book a dream lineup present day of bands, and I would like to hear bands that you haven't played with so far. Let's say it's a 3-band bill, including Jerome's Dream. What are 2 other bands that you'd like to hop on a show with and play, Eric? Present day that you haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm thinking. My very literal answer just comes to mind, just in terms of who I actually want to play with, like soon, if we can make it happen.
Steal mine. Steal mine.
Huh?
You're gonna steal mine.
Yeah. So, I think for JD, I think we would love. We definitely would love to play with Mets at some point, because those guys rule and they're true fucking rockers, and all of their records are amazing, and they have a new record coming out very soon, I believe, and they're cool dudes. So yeah, I mean, I think at some point we're gonna have to try and get on the stage with them, and then I really like Idols, which is not too far off from Mets. Those guys came up together, and I think a JD Mets Idols bill would be fucking fantastic. What do you think?
That'd be cool. That would be cool. I like the variety.
I'd go to that show.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, I'd pay top dollar for that ticket.
Yeah.
How about you, Jeff? You got 2 other bands, maybe?
No.
No.
I don't know. There was a band that we talked about. So when we're doing our stuff, we're trying to think of who we'd like to play with us. But completely in a different realm is this band called Topographies. They're actually based here in San Francisco, but it's like shoegazy kind of stuff, and I just want to see them. Usually it's like I want to play with bands that I want to see. I'm really excited. Like, oh, that band, I bet they're really good.
Sure.
And I want to play. But I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. I mean, Mets is the one. I mean, I guess sort of adjacent to Mets would be the Armed. I'd be really stoked to play with them.
Yeah.
The Armed is cool.
Chris has been playing with the Armed, and so Chris from Mets, and so yeah.
But in addition to those picks, there's so many bands that we've met over the months, and they're all awesome people, and you know, it's kind of like a limitless list of who we would be stoked to play with. But
Sure.
But I will mention another band that we haven't seen live yet, or we haven't played with, but they're kind of in our orbit a little bit. But that band Sprain that just came out with a new album on the Flesner. I haven't heard the new album yet. It's already getting a lot of chatter, but their previous recordings that have been out it's very good. So I look forward to seeing them, if not end up playing with them. But the label, the Flesner label, is putting out some really fantastic music right now.
Yep, Chat Pile.
Chat Pile is killing it.
I would play with Chat Pile.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say.
Yeah, we met a couple of those guys. We played a show in Oklahoma City at this place called The Sanctuary, which is this amazing DIY venue run by this lovely couple. And we played a show there, and our friends that we were touring with, Elizabeth Colorwheel, they're buds with Chat Pile, and a couple of them came down to the show, and they were super nice. And then our friends Meth from Chicago are now doing a few shows with them, in addition to this band Nerver, who I think everyone should check out as well. They have a split with Chat Pile, but Nerver is definitely on the come up right now, and they're such a good band. They have great songs. They have great presence. Talk about an intentional band. You could really feel it when you see them. They played ZBR with us, so check out Nerver.
They're from your neck of the woods too. I think they're from Kansas City, maybe.
I think so.
They're from there, around there somewhere.
Yeah. But check out Nerver on Instagram. You'll see like all their touring with Chat Pile right now. And then another Flesner band. I saw Agriculture play, that kind of like black metal-y kind of not shoegaze. Well, kind of shoegazy elements, but I think they identify as a black metal band. But they're almost like more screamo in a lot of ways, but super cathartic, super fucking cool. Saw them play with this band Glassing, who has been pretty active the past couple months on tour. Their drummer is shared with the band Def Club, which is fronted by Justin Pearson, who that documentary is on, to bring it full circle to my guest John Nix. So it's cool. Like point being is there's like 6 degrees of separation in this whole orbit of underground bands, and so many people are doing such great things, because I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or what, but I feel like there is this newfound kind of like intensity and focus on the execution of what these bands are doing, and there's like a lot of potency right now in the scene, especially like the younger bands. It's fucking cool to see younger bands do it and do it really well, and I'm specifically referring to Nerver, but even a band like Agriculture or Sprain, really talented, just amazing musicians.
Another band I think that would be awesome for you guys to play with, maybe you have and I just don't know it, is Portrayal of Guilt. I think that's another band kind of in your atmosphere. I don't know if you guys have ever checked them out. They're Texas boys. They actually did a split with Chat Pile a few years back as well.
That's right. Yeah. They're definitely in the orbit too. I know they toured a bit with Touche Amore, who we're buds with. They kind of pop up here and there for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always seeing a Portrayal of Guilt T-shirt anywhere we go. So they're definitely in the conversation. Yeah.
Yep.
One last question for you, Jim.
We never played with them, but we did play wherever they're from. Somewhere in Texas.
From Austin, Texas, but don't hold me to that. I'm pretty confident. Somewhere
there.
Yeah. One last question for you, gentlemen, and we'll make it non-band related. On the theme of podcasts, since Eric has a podcast, we're on a podcast right now. What are some of your favorite podcasts? Maybe 2 or 3, or if you can just punch off a few. How about you, Jeff? You a fan of podcasts? Any shows you listen to in particular?
I'm not a connoisseur. I listen to a lot of the basic stuff, like the NPR stuff. Like I really like This American Life a lot. It's just I like just the esoteric nature of it.
Sure.
I love stories. I was a history major in college, so I really like just the random stuff. And I listened to a pretty good episode the other day while I was running, and always try to listen to episodes of Song Exploder when they come out. Our friend Rishi does a fantastic job with that one. Those are the only two that are coming to mind right now. I just whatever is on, I'm usually happy to listen to it. So
Yeah, I think I'll echo Jeff with Song Exploder for sure. Our friend Rishi, longtime friend Rishi, we've known him since the band started. Basically, one of our first shows was with his band at the time. We were a few shows in. We played like this apartment in New Haven, some like house show. It was like a second floor, and he was playing guitar for a band called No Evil Star. I think he was like filling in, or he was just playing with them because everyone is friends. And anyway, he has gone on. Well, and he also did a split with Jerome's Dream way back in the day. He was under the name The 1 A.M. Radio, very like lo-fi bedroom pop stuff. Really great. But Song Exploder has become a very just widely known podcast. He even has a Netflix version of it. Netflix did a series with some amazing guests. So just really proud of him for building something so prominent and and relevant. So but another music podcast is our buds, the New Scene. This guy Keith is hosting it. The New Scene is going super hard right now, which is covering a lot in punk rock and hardcore. So props to them. But my personal podcast that I like listening to. So there's this kind of endurance athlete. His name is Rich Roll, and it's just called the Rich Roll Podcast. And he interviews a lot of amazing like thought leaders in health and science and in sport and politics, the whole gamut, similar to like the broadness of ATI, like he's just speaking to a lot of masters of their domain, and I just find it fascinating because like these are like the highest experts in any given field. So I'm just like really fascinated by listening to people talk about their space, whether it's like neuroscience or if it's
Sure.
leadership or if it's like sustainability or the list goes on. But I just love him as a host because he's so I don't know, he just has like very high emotional intelligence. He's an amazing interviewer and he really connects with his guests. And
Sure.
And he's also an endurance athlete himself. He's like an amazing established runner. He's great. So, and then I also like Andrew Huberman, who is a neuroscientist from Stanford University. He has like a huge podcast and he's very in depth, very long form. I don't get through half of them because they're like three hours long, and he's talking about the plasticity of the brain and the neurons and all this stuff. I'm like, I can like process 20 minutes of this and still feel smarter than I was 20 minutes before, but it's like very dense material. It's just like very academic and like but he's amazing, and he comes from the skate world, skateboarding world. So I think it's cool. He's like, an old skater from the Bay Area, but now he's like this esteemed professor who has this very successful podcast, and it's really fascinating to listen to.
That's kind of like listening to Sam Harris's podcast. I don't know if you guys have ever checked out Sam Harris's stuff.
Yes, exactly.
And get very deep, especially contingent on what guests that he has. And a lot of his stuff's behind paywall now, but like whenever he had Ricky Gervais on his podcast, I think it was like last year, it was pretty entertaining because like Ricky was like trying to probe him about like all these things, like for example, like lying to your kids about Santa Claus. Like he's like, "Oh, you never lied to your kids about Santa Claus?" He's like, "No, because that would be a betrayal of my children's trust." Because Sam's just so straightforward,
Wow.
Yeah. And Ricky was just like really just pushing him constantly.
That's hilarious. I gotta see
yeah,
that. Is that public? Is that on YouTube or something?
Yeah.
Or
Actually, I think I listened to it on Apple Podcasts last year when it came out, so you
Cool.
could actually hear that part of it. It wasn't behind the paywall, so it's pretty fascinating to hear somebody give Sam Harris some shit because it's a rarefied air for sure.
Yeah, I do like watching some of the debates between Sam
Yeah.
Harris and whatever other talking head, But Sam Harris, he's I'm not super familiar with his work, but I know he's like a real proponent of like like psychedelics and like obviously big into meditation and
Yeah.
but he isn't he like a PhD in neuroscience?
Uh,
Or I don't remember his academic background, but I know he's like an esteemed
I think it's
academic
mostly
of some
theology. So what he
Okay.
usually does is has debates with like huge Christian leaders, in particular. So he's probably like the most prominent living atheist now. So he does like a lot of
right.
academic debates,
Mhm,
and I don't know that he's really doing that as much now because of the success of his podcast. He really doesn't have to get outside of that world now. So such is life, right?
I think it's fascinating to watch these individuals because it's like such it's just unfamiliar territory, It's like
Sure.
but the subject matter is fascinating with a lot of it,
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's always something to learn. I'm a big advocate for getting outside of your comfort zone, talking to people that, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but maybe I can just accidentally get a little bit more intelligent by talking to somebody that's smarter than me, which is a lot of people.
I mean, but again, to the credit of like the podcast as a medium, I mean, I think this year Jeff and I we've done quite a few of them, and it's really fun because you like talk about what you're doing and stuff, but you also like learn and talk to what this what the other person is up to, or you just like learn just by even just observing like the questions you're asking or what your demeanor is and how you're kind of taking care of us. By the way, like you're an amazing host, and
Well, thank you.
You're making it super chill, and it feels just like a hang, So that's a testament to your ability to
That's
be
the
a
goal.
great interviewer. Yeah. Props to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is what I get for listening hours on end of podcasts, is a little bit of an education on.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was in bands in the past, and I just come with the mindset that like I would have loved, 15 years ago when I was prominently playing in the Midwest music scene, for somebody to be like, "Hey, come talk to me about your band,"
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of people are coming to this conversation with that type of excitement. If they can at least match my energy, like it's going to be a good time for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I really appreciate your time today. Jerome's Dream, everybody, check out all of their music. But if you're looking for something new and fresh, I recommend The Gray in Between. This is one of the best albums out this year, guys. We do our year-end list on the podcast of favorite albums. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you this is going to be in my top 10 without question. Don't be shocked if it's not my top 5 or 3. These guys are doing just amazing things, and I'm just excited to see what you guys do next.
So thank you so much. Definitely
absolutely.
appreciate the time. Appreciate the hang.
Means a lot. Yeah,
absolutely.
It does. Yeah.
Gentlemen, we'll close things out with just tell everybody what's the best way to follow you, to purchase physical media, support you guys, merch, all that stuff. Where to direct people to?
The usual spots. Just if you want to follow the band on Instagram, just look up Jerome's Dream forever. That's what it is, and you can find our stuff everywhere. I mean, don't even buy anything. Just JeromesDreamForever.com is the website, so you guys can go there. And I know it will direct you to Death Wish, and good people over there at Death Wish, of course. We've talked about some of those people earlier. Yeah.
Where you can purchase merch, T-shirts, hoodies, I think cassettes and vinyl still available on there.
All the stuff,
album as well.
Yeah.
So
hit
you
up
guys are
Death
looking
Wish.
to pick something.
Yeah,
If
Death Wish is a spot.
If you do buy something from us,
Buy a t-shirt
I'll be the one. I'll be the one sending it to you. So handled with love.
DIY, baby, till you die.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for sticking around after the break. I want to obviously thank the gentlemen of Jerome's Dream for their time today, both Jeff and Eric. What awesome dudes. I can't thank them enough for their time, and sometimes they say don't meet your heroes, and in this case, this was an exception to that statement for sure, because these guys were so cool, so real, so down to earth, so humble. Sometimes it's like hard to realize that you're sitting across from these same guys that you've listened to hours upon hours of their music, watched hours upon hours of their performances, and just been a huge fan and enjoyed every minute, every second of material that they've put out, and appreciate the art they're putting out in the universe, their passion pursuing it. It warms the cockles of my heart to see good dudes out there doing good things, and that is definitely the case with these guys. Another awesome guest this season, and I'm so thankful to have these conversations with people. Get out there and buy some of their shit, guys. Let's get on Death Wish. They got a lot of their merchandise up there. If you just want to make it real simple, you can go to jeromesdreamforever.com. That's their website. You can get to know the band through there. There's countless. Jerome's Dream has their own YouTube channel, actually. That's where, in preparation and refresher of this episode, I revisited some things they alluded to, the phone call conversation that they actually recorded back whenever 2017, I believe it was, whenever they first started having conversations about reuniting the band. You can actually listen to that phone conversation. They put that up in 2 parts, edited, if you want more behind the scenes. And that's kind of the access and things that we look for in today's society. We want the behind the scenes features and all that stuff. And these guys certainly have a pulse on that desire. And it's really cool to see them put out that type of material. And kind of maybe even, I know Eric said that he didn't anticipate or really expect as to why he was doing these things. But, I think that's kind of just like the consummate professional and artist just shining through is, he knew that he had a drive, a desire, an ambition to get things back rolling again with Jerome's Dream. And, it wasn't going to hurt. If they weren't going to use it, they weren't going to use it. If they used it, they used it. Well, now they have. And now he's provided an extra layer of access to the band that you don't get in a lot of these cases and scenarios. And it's really cool to see guys that transparent. Everything's out there. They are who they are. You either like them or you don't. And either way is fine to them. But, if you don't like these guys, you're a real fucking asshole. I'll just tell you that right now. If you listen to 5 minutes of my conversation with them, that might be a hot take, but I really don't give a shit. I think it speaks for itself, guys. So, Jerome's Dream. Can't say enough good things. Let's check them out. Let's support these guys. Let's keep them going. I can't wait to see what they do next. Got to talk about what we got going on next week. So as we do, as this being the ATI Podcast, All Things Insane, the original inception of the show whenever we first did it back in 2010, as we've talked about previously, was All Things Insane. We wanted to talk about things that Josh and I found to be interesting or insane, if you will. I think we've definitely accomplished that mission here with the second iteration of the show that started up in January of 2022. Now we will be 90 episodes deep when you listen to us next. And that 90th episode, we have a returning guest, Andy Triefenbach, who is the lead programmer for the Late Night Grindhouse events in St. Louis, hosted at De Pere Cinema, a Marcus location. You guys know we're big fans of Andy and his programming. Outside of that, Andy by trade's a projectionist, so he's somebody who is very in deep in the film world, and we are going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite movies, top 5 probably for me, definitely top 10, and that's David Cronenberg's Videodrome. I am a big fan of anything that makes you think, anything that makes you feel some kind of way, even if it's uncomfortable. I think that's kind of why I gravitate towards David Cronenberg, who also gravitates largely to this genre, and that's body horror. Things that make you uncomfortable, things that make you question reality, question what you're watching, question what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what pushes the limits of decency. I just love artists always pushing the envelope. David Cronenberg is definitely a filmmaker that does that, has done that, continues to do that, and probably my all-time favorite director, unabashedly, for that reason. Even films of his that don't get as much love. Things like Existence, for example, I think is just an unsung deep cut in his filmography. Doesn't make a bad movie. M. Butterfly, probably controversial by today's standards, but it explored the whole taboo of modern society against trans people, and just the beauty of love is love, and it shouldn't be questioned regardless of what somebody's orientation or identification is, or whatever, however you want to dice this pie. He's a director that's had a lot of things to say, sometimes in the esoteric field, sometimes more literal, but he is a guy who has done it all in every genre that there is to do in film, and done it interesting and tastefully, sometimes intentionally not tastefully, but big lover of David Cronenberg, and can't wait to just spend a whole episode talking about Videodrome. And of course, that's a part of our larger theme for October. So, in October, we're all big horror movie fans. We always try to do something special. We're all big fans of Halloween, probably all of our favorite holiday of the year. So it's the first of 5 films that we're going to be visiting anniversaries thereof. And so 40 years of Videodrome, which is weird to say. I'm not quite 40 myself, but I grew up in a household that was just littered with 80s movies. I was born in the 80s. My dad and my mom were teenagers of the 80s, into their early 20s. And so I think just as anybody does in their family unit, things get rubbed off onto them from their parents, whether, that sticks with you and lands with you and you carry it with you or not. So a lot of my favorite music and film and comic books and things like that come from the 80s. Specifically, I look back on those things fondly. There's so many things that I didn't appreciate or give enough attention to from that time period, even now that I find myself going back and exploring and revisiting. Even things in like the professional wrestling realm, we've talked about that. That was kind of hot and heavy, the territory days. And there's so much stuff that we haven't seen, but now with the access of the internet, YouTube, people putting up clips, we can reasonably attain those things now that we're interested in. So really excited to be spending the month talking about some awesome films. We've kind of laid out that schedule online. I'm just going to try and rip it off from memory here, but we're going to be talking first with Andy. Next week live, our usual time, back to 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time with Andy Triefenbach from Destroy the Brain and Late Night Grindhouse. Destroy the Brain, of course, has their own podcast too, and I would be remiss in not mentioning that real quickly, but I believe they're at or near 90 episodes themselves now. And they, of course, cover a little bit more obscure films. They get early releases. Guys, you guys got to follow these guys online because you can get early passes to horror movies that aren't even out in theaters yet. They do early screenings. They just do a lot of cool stuff through Destroy the Brain. Make people aware of upcoming movies. They have their own Discord server as well, where there's just a whole community there and conversation taking place. But that is our first installment of Horror Month. We're also going to be talking about House of 1,000 Corpses. We're going to have Mondo Franco back on the show. Mondo, of course, short film director, was also a part of major web series, horror web series, back in the day in their early inceptions in the 2010s out in California. Recently, in the last 7 or 8 years, moved to the St. Louis area, and now he's trying to drum up a film scene in St. Louis himself. He's got a few new short film entries, and really looking forward. We're going to touch base with him, of course, as we do with all of our guests and guest contributors on what they have going on new. I know he has some new short films. He's got some news he's been teasing on social media about some new releases and projects coming up. So going to be happy to sit down with Mondo on that show and talk about House of 1,000 Corpses. And I've got some very good, kind of wholesome, if you will, stories tied to that movie's release that I'm going to detail on that episode too. So that's going to be fun to cover that one for that reason. And outside of that, the 3 other films that we have lined up for the month, we're going to do the Evil Dead 2013 remake. So we're really looking forward to that. We're going to be covering that with Douglas Wicker of Search Party Pictures. Doug, of course, a guy from our area, another film director. He does, outside of that, kind of his day job, some third-party marketing and visuals, and works for a private firm, but also his own endeavors, and he has some joint projects with Mondo Franco, who we've talked about in the past. Doug, of course, been featured at several short film festivals, that is, in Chattanooga Film Festival most recently. And really looking forward to catching up with Doug, see what he's got in the pipeline too creatively. But also revisiting a remake or a reimagining of original source material that actually at least lived in the same ballpark as the original source material, which is Rarefied Air. And I think a lot of people came away pleasantly surprised with the 2013 Evil Dead remake, so going to have a good time talking about that. We're also going to be covering Cronos. Now, Cronos is one that I don't think is on a lot of people's radar. Guillermo del Toro movie from 1993. I highly recommend it. I believe there is a Criterion release of it out now. I personally don't own a physical copy of it, so I will be shopping for one. Hopefully I'll get it in time for the episode. If not, I'll have to stream it. But nonetheless, Cronos is an underrated gem. I just cannot recommend folks enough to checking out that movie. This episode's going to be a great companion piece for that. We're going to have Danny King from It's Just Two Movies, one of my absolute favorite podcasts out there right now. And of course, the concept of It's Just Two Movies is Danny covers one critically acclaimed or supposed to be good movie and one bad movie. And there's some type of connection there, whether it's a name, premise, setting. Sometimes the connections are extremely loose. Sometimes they're more literal and obvious. What is never lacking in his episodes is comedy. He has a rotating panel of guests, more commonly his co-host is Birdman, old friend of the show, and a local musician himself. And those two together are always a barrel of laughs, for sure. So It's Just Two Movies. If you guys haven't checked out that podcast, highly recommend it. Very hilarious. Looking forward to his insight on Cronos. I don't know that that's one that he's ever checked out either, so it might be a first watching for Danny as well. He signed up for it. And then we're going to do something new, and that is a watch-along. And that watch-along is going to be of The Exorcist for the 50th year anniversary of The Exorcist. It's wild to think that's been out for 50 years, but The Exorcist is such a Pandora's box of film for me in general. I mean, obviously wildly popular, well-known nowadays. It had such a cult following in its early release. You know, there was a lot of hype around it, of course, it being a possession movie. A lot of stories and fables surrounding the production of it, somewhat based on a St. Louis story, so it ties back to home. But we're going to be doing a watch-along with my buddy Joey Rakovan, which on his first episode that he actually appeared on our podcast, we got into like a 4-hour discussion about tons of stuff. Music, literature, medieval literature in particular, movies, and we talked about The Exorcist in particular. He's read all of the Exorcist books. Just going to be a great resource for that episode, but we're going to be doing that watch-along style, so going to be kind of commentary, and so we'll syncopate everything. We'll do kind of the news and notes before we go into watching the episode, and we'll give everybody a countdown, and we'll start it. So I think it'll be a unique experience for anybody who wants to take that ride, that journey with us. So we're going to be cramming in 5 episodes in the month of October, and that's going to be a quick turnaround after that, because we're going to be on site at Joe's Records after our Halloween programming. We're going to Joe's Records in St. Louis for a small business on-site spectacle. And you guys know how we do those things. We get on site, we'd sit down with business owners, we talk with them, pick their minds, talk about the uniqueness of their shop to help support and uplift small businesses. And obviously we usually live more so in the music realm with that. So it's usually record stores. This will be our 3rd record store in these submissions, but we've also done film. We've done Alamo Drafthouse, St. Louis. We, of course, done Earth Mother Health Foods, the largest health food store in Southeast Missouri. We also just recently did Terra Tacos as well, so which is an all vegan and vegetarian St. Louis restaurant. So if that is of your persuasion, your diet, I highly recommend that joint. I think that interview was awesome. If you guys haven't checked that out, do so. A lot of cool talk there because it's a horror themed restaurant, and but that's what you get with these on-sites, guys. We do deep dives with the business owners. We get to know them. We get to know them personally and how their personalities injected into their businesses. So that's what we do here at the ATI Podcast. We just try to uplift people, put a spotlight on them, and we're going to continue to do that until the wheels fall off, I suppose. So appreciate you guys supporting us. We appreciate you supporting the artists that we bring onto the show. Of course, always in the episode details is all your links to go support the artists on this episode in particular, or any episode in the future or the past. So just look in those episode detail links. You can find links to jump to that artist's work, their websites, where to find them, events, directions to businesses. Just depends on what we're covering that week. We've got you covered Of course, do that when you're not driving, folks. I'm just going to give that PSA right now. Put the phone down. It can wait. That's why we do audio and video to this episode, to our episodes, to our releases. So you've got both options. But again, details and the links, check them out. If you want to check out these artists further, we just make it extremely easy for you. For this week, I am Barrett, at Barry Insane on Instagram and Twitter. We are the ATI Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the ATI Podcast. That's where we're most active. We have a social media presence on all other social media sites. We've got outside of Instagram, we've got TikTok, we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook. We have a Facebook group. It's the ATI Podcast community where not only us and former guests of the show are at, but the listeners are, so we can all have a community of conversation, open dialogue, stay in touch. Bands that have previously been on the show, they can put up show flyers, upcoming events, upcoming albums and releases, upcoming promotions at businesses. Guys, get engaged in the community. If you're still on Facebook, I understand that like more social media isn't the answer to people's lives, but just wherever you're at, we've got you covered. So be sure to follow us over any of these platforms. If live streaming's your thing, of course, we do the Twitch thing. Twitch.tv/ATI Podcast. You can catch our live streams there. We generally go live every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. with our guests weekly. And of course, we put up our live stream schedule across our social media platforms so that you can stay attuned to what the schedule is and if there's any deviations to the regular schedule. We appreciate your time. Good night and good luck. And as always, stay safe out there. This is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.